Welcome to Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Vacation Station Travel Show. We are the publishers of Big Blend magazines, and one of those is Vacation Station Travel Magazine. And you're going to find this wonderful and fun story about traveling Ireland and Scotland. So, we're going to be chatting with Linda Kissam again. Linda Kissam is a food, wine, and shopping diva. She joins Nancy and I here on Big Blend Radio every first Saturday to talk about her latest diva adventures. But this is it's a sad story, but it's not so sad. This was a bucket list destination, both Ireland and Scotland for her. And when you read her story, you can see it on blendradio.com right now. You'll see that, her and her husband, Alan, got off on a rocky start. So welcome back, Diva Linda. How are you?
I'm fine. Good. Thank you. Everything's
I have
great.
to ask you
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
You
You never know.
You never know. Yeah. Last time we were talking about Scandinavia and talking about this was a big Europe adventure. You hadn't been overseas, during the pandemic. And like many other people, everybody got excited, started traveling. And what happened? The COVID, I call it the Klingon from hell. It needs to go.
Well, of all the silly things to avoid it in the US for 2.5 years, nothing, zero. And then we go on a 4-week European trip, and we get it on week number 2, which is meaning we're coming off a cruise ship and having and now going to fly to another country and go on a land tour. And that's where the story begins. So as you said, Ireland and Scotland have been a bucket tour item for me for 1,000 years. And as you will hear, it wasn't quite the adventure that I thought it was going to be, but still, it just goes to show you can do what you need to do, even when circumstances are not as great as you would hope for.
Yeah, I think this comes from being, experienced in travel is like, okay, first thing I want to say is you had this 10-day tour planned. And of course, this is, a big deal. It is your anniversary. It's a big deal. And bucket lists. I mean, the whole thing is like, yay, finally gonna, wear Diva's, sparkling emerald shoes coming up when she goes to Ireland, and COVID strikes. And next thing you know, you're holed up in a hotel. But, one thing that I noted right away is that your tour company helped you out, and also that you had travel insurance, which I had no idea all of that, that it would actually cover you in all of this. So tell us a little bit about that part so people know how to book properly. So in case it happens to them.
I think all land tours, and this is a land tour, and even the cruise and so forth, encourage you highly to get additional trip insurance, and it's not inexpensive. So let's say that the land tour was $6,000. By the time you're finished paying that or starting to pay that, you don't want to pay an additional $500 for trip insurance for 2 people. I mean, you just don't want to do that. But the Go Ahead Tours was smart in that they said, no, you got to do it. This is really something that I think, if I remember correctly, you couldn't go on the tour unless you purchased some sort of trip insurance. So obviously we did, and thank God we did, because as you read, we get to, so we're in Norway, we fly over to Edinburgh, Scotland, where the tour starts. We get to the hotel. Before you can go to the welcome dinner, you have to present a negative COVID test. So both neither Alan or I have been feeling all that well, but the 2-week cruise was quite intense, and we did a lot of stuff on there, and then a lot of planes going here and there. Airports in Europe are just crazy. And so by the time we got to the hotel, I thought, well, I'm not feeling all that well, but I'm probably just tired. Well, no, both of us, in fact, tested COVID. If you take this little COVID test, if you have the first part of COVID, and it's the big part, the COVID strip just blares at you like it's, they get a drop of something and it goes, ding, 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 ping, ping, ping.
Oh,
you
no, but
are-
it's not it's not like the shopping ping. That's not the
it's
good
like
ping.
no, no, but it was so now we're in our room. We have our COVID tests in hand. Now we can't go out of the room. So we call the tour operator downstairs and say, well, this is the situation. And boom, they just put things in place like within an hour, everything was settled. Stay in your room. Europe is now a 5-day quarantine, so stay there for 5 days. Everything will be brought to you. Don't worry. The hotel knows what to do. We know what to do. It's all good. Everything's taken care of. If you do get anything outside the hotel for whatever reason or delivered or whatever, just keep your receipts. So that was it. It was simple. And, I thought we were going to have to do 10 days, but no, we only had to do 5. And I have to say, on day 6, I was still a little bit tired. My husband and I both had it at the same time. He experienced it one way and I experienced it another. So, the two of us going out, but we decided, we only had 1 day before we had to get on a plane and go to Ireland. So we got out of the hotel on day 6 and we found that in other situations that if you have a limited time in any city, place, whatever, get on the hop on, hop off tour bus. In Edinburgh, as in Ireland, there are 2 to 3 different companies that call themselves the same thing. So somebody must have not trademarked that hop on, hop off name. And it was great. You get on it. If you're not feeling, your best self, you can sit on your ass for the entire, 2-hour, it goes in a loop. And you can either get off immediately when you find something you like, or you can stay. So my advice to people is to go ahead, hop on, hop off tour bus is only about $20 each in American
That's
money.
not bad at all.
It's not bad at all. No. And so anyway,
And you don't have to
took the
drive on the
tour.
wrong side of the street.
You don't have to drive, and they sort of pick you up at these very convenient spots. And we got off for a few of them. But first we went all the way around, and then we decided what we were going to see. And I think that's the best thing to do. I think it's good to don't get on it too early because nothing's open, but don't get it on late because especially if you're in the fall or early spring and it gets dark early, that's a problem. So we got on about, I would say about 11 o'clock, and we were all done maybe by 4 or 5, I think. And yeah, I think you save a lot of money. You don't have to get Uber or a taxi or whatever. That's not necessary. Wherever you go, there's going to be a spot for them to pick you up. And a lot of the spots that we were supposed to go to were royal related. And of course, that was, you don't know, but that was the time that the Queen died. And so many places in Scotland were closed.
So she passed away in Scotland.
Yes, and so they were. So the place that one of the castles we're supposed to see was for the royal residence, and of course, she died there. And of course, it just shut down. Other businesses shut down just in honor of her to show how much they love her. Not so much in Ireland, but certainly
it's weird. We were in England when John Lennon got shot.
Oh,
and it was a really big deal, and it was little.
Right.
But I knew who he was. I knew his music,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was like the world just stops when somebody so iconic, passes like that. And with the Queen, I remember it's Operation Unicorn. Glenn Burrows taught us it's Operation Unicorn is what it's called in Scotland. So if she passes, they have these sayings, and I'm like, what are you talking? His article, he was talking about Operation. I'm like, what do you mean unicorn? I'm thinking this is funny. And he's like, no, it's not funny. It's part of like a crest or something that this is, it's like a code word. What happens in place if she passes, just like you said, how the hotels already have these procedures and protocols. And so you're in Scotland while this happens. I mean, that's pretty wild. And so
I mean,
what was the
it
coverage
was-
like while I know you were watching it in the hotel room, but we were
yeah,
there
yeah.
we were in England when Lady died. got married to what was then Prince Charles, and nobody was doing anything but glued to the TV set of, Lady Di and going through the cathedral and getting married. And I was going, this is pretty, we'd come out of Kenya, we're out of the bush and into like, what is this? So it was kind of
Well, it
wow.
was very interesting. As I said, many of the businesses, small and large, just were closed until after the day after her funeral. So that was about a week process or so. And little signs were in the windows saying, may she rest in peace. She was a great, a great person, blah, blah, blah. And it was, I'm going to say most of the channels that we had anyway in the hotel had coverage. They did a couple breaks. At first it was real concentrated, and then sort of as the days went by, it wasn't quite so much. But as you said, they knew exactly what to do. It wasn't like they were trying to pull all this together in a minute. It was just amazing. And I think the best thing for me seeing that was how no one was fighting, calling anybody names. The parliament,
nice.
Of course, over there in England is going through some reorganization. But you know what? There was none of that. None of that on TV, none of that out while people were waiting in line. There was no picketing, there was no nothing. Occasionally one of the broadcasters would say something that was really not kind, but I think probably somebody in his ear is saying, knock it off, because we're not doing that now. So, because the big deal over there is what is the worth of the royals, right?
Yes,
Do they have a place? And so this reorganization, where King Charles now steps up, and then his son steps up, and then the other one says, I never want to be part of it, and he's in the US. So that's great fodder for everybody. That's great news fodder for everybody. But you know what? I only heard it a couple times, and then I'm sure somebody in somebody's ear is saying, we're not doing that, so stop it.
Yeah, I heard that here. Yeah, here too.
Yeah.
Here, well, the royal family has always been up to question. We did an interview with Glenn, everyone, Norfolk Tories is on our show the third Saturday. You're on the first Saturday, and excuse me, the fourth Saturday. I'll get my Saturday. No, it is. Yes, it's the fourth. Sorry. And he did a post interview with us about it because he had just written, and we'd just done an interview on her Jubilee. I mean, it was amazing, her reign, of who this woman was. And I think what was so interesting about her is understanding who she was as a woman from a young girl serving in World War II. Come on, how she became queen. She didn't go, hey, I want to be queen one day. She didn't, and she took it with grace and strength. And I think that was the messaging we heard. And I think was really refreshing you look at, the politics here, I don't pick a country at this point, pick a continent. Who's happy? No one. But she left there were some things that weren't perfect, and you can't be, because we're all human, right? But I think she had some grace that we could kind of bring back into our world.
I think so. I think, talking of grace, one of the best things that I did in Edinburgh was to hop off the bus in the big marketplace in the Royal Mile, and then go, we looked up where there would be afternoon tea. So we went, we found it. It was about, I'm going to say it was about a 15, 20-minute walk from the bus. And oh my gosh, for just figuring it out, when we first got to the hotel, we were looking to go into the Palm Court area of the hotel. So it was a very famous hotel. And we went up and said, we'd like to do afternoon tea, thinking it was a weekday and how hard could it be. They said they were full for like weeks. And I'm going, oh no, of course they would be. It's a very famous place and a foodie's delight. And it should be on everybody's bucket list. And then, I don't know, my husband talked to him, and I don't know what he did, but all of a sudden they said, well, okay, you can come in and have tea, but you have to be gone in an hour and a half. I can do
American,
that.
we move quickly.
I know, 20 minutes, that's all I need. So they let us in and had a wonderful spot for us. We weren't even by, next to the kitchen or something. It was very nice. And it was spectacular. And they apologized because the way they were honoring the Queen's or notifying the Queen's death was they didn't have any music that day. So I think there's a musical part to this that we didn't get, but that I don't care. It was the most amazing service ever. And the food, of course, was great. The attention was wonderful. So if anybody, all the names are in my article if you want to read that.
Yeah,
and,
this is just the way the guy was pouring the tea. Like, I'm
pouring-
like, are you kidding me? There's no way in heck. I mean, I'd be like, I'd look like I'm dowsing, you know?
I asked him, I said, well, how long before you get to be the tea pourer? That portion of the ceremony. He says, oh, it's a while, and you have to be in the kitchen for hours pouring cold tea. He said, first it's cold so you don't kill yourself or burn yourself. He said, but eventually you have to go to hot tea. He said, there are spills, but eventually you get proficient at it. And then, the head guy says, okay, you're up. And I mean, they're just relaxed and they're pouring 2 pots of tea at once from way up here. I mean, it's just crazy. It was just.
What with the tea, like, does the quality of the tea change when you go to something like this? Like, are they doing all organic, or are you able to get herbal tea if you're not into, the typical
That's a
black
good
tea?
question. Yeah, I noticed that almost at every tea house I've ever been at, they favor one tea company. And that tea company generally has a whole line of anything you could ever want, from even vegan now teas and so forth. I mean, it's just crazy. So they give you a list of the teas available on that day, and there's probably 10 of them. And each one at the table can select a different tea.
Oh, nice.
And you can tell whether you're picking a good tea or not by the expression on the server's face.
So this is like going
if
to
you
a
said-
wine bar in a way.
Yeah. Oh, very, very much so. And if you make a mistake, you can ask for a second tea, and they all just accommodate you, because I love anything that has fruit in it. My husband doesn't want anything but Earl Grey. So that like most tea shops, everybody gets their own pot of tea, and that it was the same on the cruise I went on.
Okay.
And I think that makes more sense. So, and then of course, at this place, you could have cocktails. So they sort of encourage you to have your cocktail first. I had a strawberry mimosa, which was unbelievably wonderful.
Wow.
And then once you're through with that, then they come back, and there's no rush, even though we said an hour and a half, there's no rush. And, they're just there to make it absolutely beautiful. And the decor in this thing was unbelievably beautiful. They had this huge dome, and they had all these chandeliers, and oh my gosh, what an experience.
Did they do the gold rim on the teacup? Because I remember you
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about that makes
Oh,
a big.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was
Wow.
just, you couldn't have asked for more. I mean, maybe there's an even better place. I think it was $100 per person. I think that was how much it was, but worth every dime. I mean, it was a wedding anniversary gift from Alan to me. He'll go to tea, but it's not like his very favorite thing to do. He'd rather be at the pub eating, bangers or something.
But you guys
So,
balance out your marriage pretty well. I mean, with you go on the
we're
boat.
very
well, then,
different
okay,
people.
this time, yeah, but that the opposites attract, right? And I think that's a cool thing. And to travel together, it's, I know even when we've traveled with you, we're all a little different. And then it's like,
Yep,
next thing
yep.
you know, you're going in a gold mine in Julian, and
Yep.
you're like, I didn't know I was going to go to gold mine. I remember
Look at
I'd be
that.
like, I want to do the shopping. And we're like, we don't want to do the shopping. Well, now you sent us on a shopping mission. Thanks, Linda. Well, you've made us really changed our mindset of things, and that's the thing. I think when it's not your thing, you still get to learn something new that you didn't know. And I think that's the whole part of travel, is to actually do things that you don't think you want to do. You know what I mean?
I would agree. I would
So-
absolutely agree. I mean, I would have never thought that I would really like a hop on, hop off bus, because I'm not a bus person. But every country I've ever been to, Spain, I think almost all the places we went to, Australia, gee, everywhere. It just gives you a very quick version of the place you're in, and it's very safe. And if all you want to do is just go round and round on the bus, you can do that. There's no, you got to get off until it's the end of the day, and then you have to get off. But gosh, we got to see so many things. And as I said, the tea was a highlight of my trip, actually. We had wonderful tea aboard the Viking cruise, but this blew everybody else out of the water. Really, it's the best tea I've ever had. So
that's awesome when you have those experiences. But then on the other side, now, what was Alan thinking about Guinness? Did he enjoy going to in Dublin? It sounded like that was really packed too, going to the Guinness.
Oh, it was so packed that we weren't able to get into some of the major things. We were able to walk by and look at it and so forth. They get beer back at the hotel and so forth, that same beer, but it's more of an experience if you go, because it has music and all that kind of stuff.
And you're looking at all the different people. When you have COVID, right? After having COVID, you're like, stay away.
I know.
Stay away from
Well, you're not quite sure, I mean, it said the test said negative, but sort of wondering about it. But out we went, and Alan drank Guinness most of the time that we were in Scotland. So it was very, very good. And I think he enjoyed himself. I think he would have enjoyed himself a little bit more if we'd gotten into one of those pubs. But all the strange things, I did not plan for so many tourists and locals. They were mixing and matching, and it was just amazing. The amount of tourists, or maybe it's locals, I don't know, but it's a college town. Dublin's sort of Edinburgh is sort of a college town, and so you have that mix there. And we'd had a little bit more time the next day, but we didn't. We had to hop on a plane.
I love Edinburgh. I went to Edinburgh Castle when I was a little girl, and I think we did every castle we could in England, Scotland, and Wales, and I collected postcards. But I was all into the castles, because you talk about the royalty. I mean, Diva Linda, this is your style. I mean, you can go in and see their fashions with all their jewels. And I would just look at this going, how did they do this? All this intricate work, and the big cloaks and the capes and I always just thought, and then you think here's this, opulence. And then you go down in the dungeon and you can see where people are guillotined and executed and hanged, and, and you see all like where they would shoot things up through the, over the moats, and like, wow, okay, this is like a whole other, it's really rich history when you see these historic churches and castles. It just really takes you back to understanding medieval life. And that's a thing too that you experienced, was some really rich medieval history, which medieval ages are crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy to see a lot of these old buildings, especially on the Royal Mile, now turned into shops and restaurants and so forth. And you have to think about how long some of those buildings have been there. And now they're like souvenir shops, or, they're this or that. And many of the churches, of course, are no longer churches. They're businesses as well. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's just this dichotomy between old and new, right? But everything is, in progress. I mean, moving forward. So, probably look different again when we go back.
Oh, well, Europe is so fashionable too. That's what's so interesting. They're always, it's this, progressive in regards to style and design. And here you've got these, I mean, and then when you see the older buildings, you're like, they really had that forefront of design. And that, to me, whether it's clothing, the cathedrals and like what you were talking about where you had tea, just that intricacy and attention to detail. You and I love the attention to detail.
That's right. Would any hotel be able to afford what I saw? Marble floors and grand banisters and these the beautiful glass domes thing. I mean, I don't know if anybody could build that now. It just costs too much money. But boy, I'm sure glad I got to see it, because it was just absolutely beautiful. And,
so are you going to go back? I mean, if you go,
I think I would like to. I would go to a different area, of course, in both of them. But one day in Edinburgh does not tell you a lot about Scotland, but it tells you something. We were gonna, the 10-day tour we were gonna take was gonna go all over the place, but oh well, it's just the way it goes. But
And Dublin, did you would you go back to Ireland and go back to Dublin?
I would go on the other side closer to the water, I think. This Ireland is really green. I mean, we live part-time in the Northwest here, in Seattle, and I have been up to Alaska and into Canada a lot and stuff. They don't have anything on green. Ireland
That's
is
insane. It's insane to think, right?
It's just insanely beautiful, insanely green, and it's good to see. We took a first day we were there. We only had 2 days. First day we were there, we went on the hop-on, hop-off bus, and that took us around to all the sites, and that was fun and good. And then the second day, we took a 9-hour bus tour, and that sounds like a lot, and it is, but it was comfortable, and it took us to so we were going to Killarney, and that's way away. That's like 9 hours away or so, and it wouldn't be 5 hours away probably. And we got to go through the national park, and we got to go to an old monastery, and that was interesting to see the graveyards, and the fact that, unlike the U.S., not every part of their country is being new housing. They're smart. They're keeping a legacy going, and people want to see it. I mean, there are tons of buses to see all these places, and of course, Killarney was our final stop, and it was very interesting because when we got off the bus, the tour guide and the bus driver were going to go to lunch, and so we said, "Well, where are you going to lunch?" And they said, "Well, in the design center, right across from the castle." And so we went with them, and it was one of the best meals we had on the entire land tour trip, other than the tea. And what did I get? I got Irish stew, and it was really good. It was excellent, and I don't know, I forget what my husband had, but it was all local foods and local desserts and local drinks, and it was wonderful. And
Wow.
the town of Killarney is a fun place to go shopping. It's another one of those things that old buildings that have newer stores in it and so forth. And I didn't see a lot of empty stores, which was good. That was really good. And it's a fairly compact shopping center. So right next to the castle, so you can just kind of go over there and browse and so forth. And that was nice. That was lovely. And
the Phoenix Park, that is something I want to go to from what you were writing about. Like it's a park, but with deer, and it's bigger than
it's
Central Park,
huge.
but it's got
that was on the hop on. Was that on the hop off bus? I don't know. I think so. And anyway, it's the largest. They call it an urban park, and it's just huge. And there's fields for athletic things. There's fields for walking. There's gardens. I didn't have a chance to. That's one of the things I didn't get to get off the bus and get to see. But oh my gosh, and it's all well kept. You know how sometimes there's no money, and then you start seeing the icky stuff, and it was beautiful. I mean,
this is so important to
weddings.
have these urban parks. That's what, with Nancy and I started, is, with the Love Your Parks tour, was national park units, monuments and memorial sites and national parks and all of that. Now it's like every single park, because we'll go to like a small town, middle of East Texas or something, wherever, Kansas, and you'll have this very old historic downtown. You get that feel for, wow, this is like an agricultural community. They'll have the big water tank, and that kind of thing. And then you'll see in between like stores, somebody's made a tiny pocket park. It's just like a little grassy thing, maybe a gazebo, maybe like one of those lending book library things, and someone would have planted something. Eventually a mural comes in, and it's just a place where people can go in between work or just sit down and stop. And I think it's something we talked about shopping. This is actually a really important thing. I think that there's these places to just stop and get to know your surroundings, but it becomes a green space for wildlife and birds. And otherwise we're going to have all these dead zones. The more we
I
don't
agree.
garden, the more dead zones we're going to have, and then life is just going to suck. So that's why we want these parks. So these urban
that'd be
parks are a
true.
big deal, and they do bring in commerce. That's the other thing, public art comes in, shops come in, it becomes something. A lot of urban parks will have events and festivals, walking areas, bird gardens, like you're saying, but then food trucks will come in and it becomes a lunchtime place, and it is a healthy thing for people to experience. I'm so glad to hear that
Absolutely.
about Dublin. I had no idea.
Oh,
I think
it's
it was
just
Dublin.
huge. I think, it's bigger than Dublin. I mean, it's just huge. And it was lovely to see all the uses, all the different kind of uses and all the walking trails. And I mean, this place is huge. That's why I keep saying that. I didn't get to go to the interior of it. I was, just sort of in the side of it
Mhm.
going through, but oh my goodness. And lots of cars were there, parking and just enjoying it and so forth. And I think they have buses that go in and out, just local buses that you can just hop on, hop off. Not that, I mean, they would be regular city buses, but it was wonderful to see all the different use, people just having picnic. People, as I understand it, there's a sculpture area or sculpture garden, there's a botanical garden, I think there's a zoo. There's so much there because it's so large and it's well maintained, beautiful, manicured. It's really, really beautiful. I didn't see any area that was overgrown or neglected or whatever. And everybody seemed to have just a wonderful time. I did.
This
I
is
didn't get
awesome.
off the bus. It was just wonderful.
I
Yeah.
want to go. I
Perfect.
want to go. We didn't do Ireland at all when we were there. I mean, we lived there, but we did England, Scotland, Wales. We didn't do the Isle of Man, which our family comes from, and we didn't do the Isle of Wight. So now it's like we need to do the eyes.
To do the
Get the
eyes,
chance-
yeah. I think, my husband, I mean, we certainly in 3 days for 2 countries didn't see enough, right? I could say it's off my bucket list, but it's not. It's back on because we didn't really get to spend any, I'd call it enjoyable time, just downtime, just go to the park and just sit there and watch everybody, or go to the gardens or whatever. I mean, that to me would have been
And she
would have
wants
been
high
great,
tea every
but,
single day. Thank you very much.
every day would be wonderful. Yes. And these 2
Yep.
countries, of course, they serve tea constantly, which is quite wonderful. And but I did see both hotels have given in and are doing cappuccinos, and they have the big fancy machines. So breakfast and so forth. So I thought, gosh, I didn't know. Last time we went to England, there was not a cappuccino to be seen. You could see it in Italy and some of the other countries, but England was sort of holding out, but not so much anymore.
Man, this is interesting. Just
Very
how it all changes. So where's next for you?
I don't know. I really don't know. I kind of have my eye on Egypt.
Ooh, that's where
So we'll see if that can materialize or not. I would actually no, it's not stupidly. I had an opportunity to go there this year instead of Scandinavia, but it would be too
It was a
awkward to do
Viking
the other
cruise.
part.
It was a Viking.
Yeah. This would be a long ship too, which would be much more my
Ooh.
style. Yeah,
Ooh.
so it'd be the smaller boat, and because it's more maneuverable and go in and out. Although they sent me a promotional thing that just was talking about their Christmas market. Oh, that was a wonderful. I could go on that every single year. So,
See?
I mean, that was because it changes so much. I probably wouldn't have wanted to go last year because I don't think Germany especially is really strict on COVID. So I'd have to check that out because most of the markets are in Germany. But anyway, let's have our fingers crossed for 2023 that Egypt, maybe I can.
That would be
Egypt.
cool. You just want to get
That'd be
back on a
wonderful.
camel.
Yes.
After
that was
Jordan,
fun.
she's all like, yeah, let's get the diva on the
I
camel. I'll
enjoyed
never
it.
forget when we were seeing your photos and I'm going, how's she like posting from the Bedouin lands, you know? And then Diva's in a like a tent thing, going having
Yeah,
tea,
yeah,
and
that
and
was a
then she's like
trip
on a
of, oh,
camel. I know. I would go, Nancy, come look on Facebook. Diva's on a camel. She's like, no way.
yeah, oh, yeah. It was a great experience. How about
Oh,
Divas on a Burro for an hour? That was
when,
interesting.
where was that?
That was in Jordan,
It
in
was.
their
That's
park.
right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
So, that was I thought, who would ever think you'd do that? But I did, and it was, the rocking. As long as you can get, into
you have
the
to
and not
sink
worry too
into it.
much about rocking off
Yeah.
or flipping forward. If you just don't think about those things, it's a great experience. And the funny part is the guide runs next to you the entire time. So you have a guide, they don't have their own burro. They just have you, and they're walking that, and it
Wow.
doesn't walk, it sort of trots. So I think that's interesting.
That's that's hard work.
That's hard
That's
work. Well, these guys are skinny, they're
it's
they're working for their dollar. That's for darn sure.
no kidding.
Very
No
sweet.
kidding.
Always, yeah, always very sweet. Everybody was always sweet. But when we got to Ireland, nobody was closed for the Queen. Very little mention of her, or it was like a non-event. There was a little
Wow.
bit of stuff. It was some of it was on TV. I think the most coverage they got was the funeral. I saw that it was in the hotel lobby, which I found interesting. So that's very, I didn't, of course, if you know the
Well,
history
they
of
are
Ireland,
different. Yeah, it's a little Ireland. Yeah, the whole, it's
there's a little
still
bit of
going through.
conflict there.
Yeah, we just did an interview about a documentary called Young Plato, and I really encourage people to watch it. It's something that can unify the world. It's about a principal teaching philosophy to young students to overcome the turmoil that their families, the generational turmoil in Belfast, and teaching them to map out things like, oh, why did I do this? Why did I hit this boy?
Yeah.
Oh, and go through that. I know as a, teacher, you would appreciate this. So, and it really shows the history of what Ireland went through, the Protestant and Catholics, and even the little kids, how they run around with some of that in them. And they don't want that. The kids want unity, and to see this newer generation come through, it's beautiful, beautiful and inspiring. So I want to go to Ireland. I want to go.
You need to go. Yeah,
Okay.
it was beautiful where I was. I went on the other side though, where all the shopping is, where the crystal is made and all that sort of stuff. So I
Ooh,
wasn't close to that at all. So that's what I would
you
do, would
need
go
to
on
go
the other
back.
side. I would like to cliffs, the beautiful,
Oh yeah.
under the water cliffs and all that. Yeah. So we'll
Mhm.
see. But if somebody says, would you prefer to go to Egypt? I would have to say yes, because I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, it's time. It's
It's on
time.
my bucket list. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be waiting. I know you
Yeah,
do the
me too.
Northwest, Pacific Northwest too. Maybe we'll see you there. But in the meantime, we'll see you for next month's conversation. And we're going to be talking
Okay.
about promoting books and articles, and we're going to go on the business side. So that's going to be fun to chat with you again. So Diva Linda, take care and have fun and happy holidays. I know, don't tell Alan everything you're doing. Just kidding. It's the holiday
Well,
season.
I bought his
Diva gone
Christmas
wild.
present. Yeah, well, I bought his Christmas present to me yesterday. That
Oh,
makes sense.
yes.
They even wrapped it at the store. So I said, well,
That's it.
here's what you're getting me. He said, do I want to know? I said, well, you're going to see it on the credit card. Let's wait.
See.
And see. What did he want? What does he want for Christmas? He wants an electric panel for the boat.
All right. Well, there it
No,
is. So
there
he
it
gets
is.
to shop for that himself, right? And then wrap it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's just the way a marriage works or a relationship works.
Yeah,
It's all
absolutely.
good.
Yeah, you got to celebrate each other's, that's
Stuff.
yeah, everybody's got to have their own thing, I dig it. Well, thank you so much, Diva Linda. Everyone, Diva Linda's article under Linda Kissam is on blendradioandtv.com, and you'll also see it in the upcoming issue of Vacation Station Travel Magazine. And follow her adventures. Go to allingoodtaste.info. And of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. She's here every first Saturday.
Thank you.